Good afternoon. It is 3:40 in the afternoon for me. It's a good afternoon, right? And found some information on the things people are talking about uh, a lot lately. President Trump and deporting people and such. So I did a little bit of research and it's some digging. Some of this is going to be a little bit boring, but the information, if you're a person to do some research on your own, this information will be very valuable for you. So I urge you to stick with me. Uh, we'll get through it, and then you can take away from it, whatever you feel is important to you. Deporting people by presidential power.
1. Constitutional basis. The U.S. Constitution does not explicitly assign immigration powers to the President. However, immigration authority stems from Article 2, Section 1 Executive Power. The President shall be Commander-in-Chief of the Army and Navy of the United States. Application to immigration allows the President to deploy military or National Guard, sometimes controversially, to enforce border security or respond to immigration-related crises. Example: presidents have sent troops to the southern border to support Customs and Border Protection, CBP. Article 2, Section 2 Commander-in-Chief, Treaty Making, and Appointment Powers. He shall nominate, and by and with the advice and consent of the Senate, shall appoint all other officers of the United States. Application to immigration. President appoints the heads of DHS, ICE, CBP, and USIS. This gives influence over immigration enforcement and adjudication. Article 2, Section 3, Take Care Clause. He shall take care that the laws be faithfully executed. Application to immigration requires the President to enforce immigration laws passed by Congress, but gives discretion on how to enforce them. Used to justify deferred action for childhood arrivals, DACA, under Obama. Prioritizing deportations based on criminal record, public safety, etc.
So he's not the only president to start deporting people based on their immigration status and whether they have been to the court system for criminal acts. He's just not the only president that's ever done it. There are other presidents, and some of these presidents are praised by the people. And I'm not saying that they were terrible people, these presidents. I'm just saying that they didn't do anything differently as far as this is concerned, as Trump did. But they were heroes, Trump is not. I don't understand the difference. And I'll tell you something else. I've been in these discussions. I've spent hours and hours and hours in these discussions, and I ask a lot of questions. And the most common response, eventually, when the conversation ends, people roll their eyes and walk away. They call me bad names. I've been threatened physically because I just ask questions that people have a hard time answering. So when you get into a conversation, you have to learn to speak authoritative about it. Learn some answers to some of the tough questions. If you don't know those answers, and you might need them one day, so we'll find out.
You are listening to 60 Second Civics from the Center for Civic Education. I'm Mark Gage. Article 2 of the Constitution places the executive power, the powers of the executive branch of government, in the President of the United States. Unlike Article 1, which gives Congress those powers herein granted, Article 2 does not define executive power. The Constitution lists some of the President's powers, but those listed have never been thought to be the President's only powers. The listed powers include commanding the Army and Navy as Commander-in-Chief, heading the Cabinet and executive departments, and granting reprieves and pardons. The President's constitutional powers also include making treaties, subject to the advice and consent of the Senate, as well as nominating ambassadors, public ministers, consuls, and judges of the Supreme Court and other federal courts. Presidents have the power to recommend legislation to Congress, review legislation passed by Congress, and return bills to which he or she objects. Presidents are also the nation's chief diplomat. They receive ambassadors and other public ministers. The Constitution further directs the President to take care that the laws be faithfully executed. It also requires the President to take an oath that includes a promise to faithfully execute the office of President and preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. Presidents have asserted many reasons to justify a broad definition of executive powers, particularly in times of national emergency, such as the Great Depression and war. The Constitution has proven flexible enough to adapt to changing understandings of presidential power. That's all for today's podcast. 60-second civics for civic education.
Okay, so they touched on a lot of stuff in that video that they touched on up there, but there's more. There's more.
Delegated powers. From Congress through the Immigration and Nationality Act, (INA), and related statutes. 1. Suspension of entry, (INA) Section 212, F, 8 U.S.C. Section 1182, F. Whenever the President finds that the entry of any aliens or of any class of aliens into the United States would be detrimental to the interests of the United States, he may suspend the entry of all aliens or any class of aliens. Allows broad discretion to block non-citizens from entering the U.S. Used by Reagan, Bush, Clinton, targeted entry bans, Trump.
Now, you see, Trump is not the only one who's done it. Obama has done it too.
Travel ban on certain majority Muslim nations, upheld in Trump versus Hawaii, 2018. Biden, suspensions from specific countries for public health or safety reasons. 2. Parole authority, (INA) Section 212, D, 5, 8 U.S.C. Section 1182, D, 5, A, the Secretary of Homeland Security, and historically the President through DOJ/INS, may permit temporary entry of otherwise inadmissible aliens for urgent humanitarian reasons or significant public benefit. Used for Cuban Adjustment Act. Ukrainian and Afghan parole programs. DACA arguably rests on parole logic, though debated. 3. Deferred action.
And here's something about the humanitarian side of it here.
Biden administration ends humanitarian parole for Afghan refugees. The Biden administration has announced that as of October 1st, 2022, Afghan nationals will no longer be able to enter the U.S. under the Humanitarian Parole Authority. This change is part of the new refugee resettlement strategy and is a significant shift in the U.S. government's approach to resettlement amidst the refugee crisis in Afghanistan. Roughly 90% of the 86,000 Afghans that have resettled in the U.S. since August 2021 were admitted through the parole process, and this policy change could move tens of thousands of Afghans with pending parole requests stranded overseas. Up until the most recent revision, Afghan evacuees could be admitted to the U.S. through the humanitarian process known as parole. Urgent humanitarian parole allows high-risk refugees to bypass the lengthy visa or asylum process when entering the United States. Recipients of the parole are able to live and work in the U.S. for a specific duration of time, but they are not granted permanent resident status or provided a pathway to U.S. citizenship. The new policy's main objective, dubbed Operation Enduring Welcome, is to ensure future Afghan arrivals have a direct pathway to permanent legal status in the U.S. Essentially, the government is shifting its focus away from parole and moving toward the resettlement of Afghan evacuees who qualify for permanent residence under specific immigration programs. As for the program, there is a priority order. Afghans who are immediate family members of U.S. citizens, evacuees currently residing in the U.S., applicants who are eligible for special immigrant visa, CIV status. For Afghans who do not fall into one of these three priority categories, legally entering and resettling in the U.S. is likely to become more difficult with parole no longer an option. The policy revisions have been met with some criticism by immigration advocates and lawmakers. The government's response to the Afghan refugee crisis has been bureaucratic and slow. In the past year, Afghan evacuees have grappled with a historically flawed special immigrant visa, CIV system, accusations of discrimination amidst mass denials of parole cases, and other visa processing delays. If you found this video helpful, please be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to Boundless for the latest in immigration news. Thanks for watching.
This is a little bit more information on that. Let's see. Well, that wasn't very helpful, was it?
Basis. Article 2 Take Care Clause. ENA, yes.
So,
Section 103, 8 U.S.C. ENA, legal basis for immigration law. From Trump Treaty as a creator.
sorry about that.
Section 252.
Messed that up.
Not in one specific ENA section, but grounded in the president's discretion to enforce removal provisions. ENA section 236 to 241, 8 U.S.C. Section 1226 to 1231. Examples: DACA 2012 Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. DAPA 2014, later blocked by courts. Biden Enforcement Guidelines 2021 to 2022 prioritize criminal aliens and threats.
So Biden was going after the criminal aliens as well. It just wasn't as public, and they didn't hate Biden. That's all I can figure. What is prosecutorial discretion? Here we go.
What is prosecutorial discretion in immigration enforcement? Have you ever wondered how immigration laws are enforced and who decides which cases to prioritize? This brings us to the concept of prosecutorial discretion in immigration enforcement. This term refers to the authority that law enforcement agencies, like United States Immigration and Customs Enforcement, have to determine whether to enforce immigration laws against individuals. This authority allows these agencies to focus on cases that matter most based on specific criteria. For example, they might consider the severity of the violation or the individual's personal circumstances. This approach is essential for managing resources effectively and ensuring that enforcement efforts target high-priority cases. It is not just about strict enforcement. It is also about making thoughtful decisions. In the realm of international policy, prosecutorial discretion plays a significant role. It helps balance the need for enforcement with humanitarian considerations. This means that law enforcement can exercise flexibility when dealing with individuals who do not pose a significant threat to national security or public safety. For instance, they might choose not to deport individuals who have strong family ties in the country, are victims of crimes, or have compelling humanitarian reasons for staying. Prosecutorial discretion can be applied at various stages of immigration proceedings. This includes deciding whether to start removal proceedings, whether to detain or release individuals, or whether to settle or dismiss cases altogether. It also involves decisions about granting deferred action, terminating removal proceedings, or staying a final order of removal. These choices are usually guided by a set of priorities and guidelines that reflect a broader immigration policy goals. From an international policy viewpoint, prosecutorial discretion serves as a tool for managing the complexities of immigration enforcement while respecting human rights and international norms. It allows countries to tailor their enforcement strategies to align with diplomatic and humanitarian objectives. This ensures that immigration policies are effective while also being humane. However, it is important that the exercise of discretion is balanced with the need for consistency and fairness in applying the law. In summary, prosecutorial discretion in immigration enforcement is a critical aspect of how immigration laws are applied. It allows law enforcement agencies to prioritize cases based on various factors, ensuring that enforcement is both effective and compassionate. This approach helps navigate the challenges of immigration policy while considering the human element involved.
Okay, well, there's a little bit more. And detention and removal authority coming up. This is where it starts to get a little bit dry, but I promise you, it is important.
4. Detention and Removal Authority ENA section 235, 236, 241 8 U.S.C. Section 1225, 1226, 1231 delegates to the executive branch the power to arrest, detain, and deport non-citizens. Conduct expedited removal of recent entrants. Grant or deny release from immigration custody.
So they can get people arrested, they can detain people, and they can deport people. Now they can either say you can stay or you can go, depending on how things turn out when the individual goes through their due process. And I did a whole video on due process. And people who are deported from this country do get their due process. If don't listen to anybody who says they don't. Those people, I don't care what news station it is, I don't care what politician it is. If they say these people don't get due process, they're lying to you. They're lying to you. There is a whole process just for deportation. So yes, they do get due process.
2. Presidential powers over immigration. 1. Power to exclude non-citizens. Presidents have the authority to prohibit the entry of certain non-citizens into the U.S. if deemed detrimental to national interests. Legal basis. 8 U.S.C. Section 1182, F. Venus Section 212, F. Whenever the President finds that the entry of any aliens would be detrimental to the interests of the United States, he may suspend the entry of all aliens or any class of aliens. Key case. Trump versus Hawaii, 2018. The Supreme Court upheld President Trump's travel ban, affirming the broad discretion granted by Section 1182, F.
So the Supreme Court has ruled that deportations, right, based on the things that Trump is deporting for, is constitutional. It is constitutional. Right? Now, people are screaming, and I'll say it again. They don't get due process. They do. They do get due process. It's so sick of hearing that. If there's something you feel there's something you need to know, even if you don't feel you need to know it, go find out anyway. Learn something. That's what I say to those people. I got into a discussion the other day, and I got to tell you this. I actually showed the person that I was discussing this with, I actually showed them the Supreme Court decisions, the laws that have been passed, the bills that were passed that the laws are based on. I showed them all of this stuff, and you know what they said? All of that's wrong. All of that's wrong. United States, the Congress website, that's wrong. That's wrong. Constitution, that doesn't say it right. That's not right. That's wrong. But they were screaming, they're deporting these people, it's unconstitutional, it's against the law. Showed them the laws, I showed them the constitutional backing, and they said that that was wrong. So now they're saying that the thing that they are saying is important is wrong. When you start stating things that you cite, if you cite something and then you say the very same thing that you cited is wrong, then aren't you calling yourself wrong? I mean, that's how I see it. I'm not, if I'm wrong, I want to know. So these people who are doing this, they call themselves wrong all the time, but they just keep doing it, and it's beyond me.
2. Power to enforce immigration laws. Presidents direct federal immigration enforcement policy through agencies like DHS, ICE, and CBP. Legal basis. Article 2 Take Care Clause. ENA, FISC. Section 103, 8 U.S.C. Section 1103 designates the Secretary of Homeland Security as having primary enforcement authority under presidential oversight. Key cases. Arizona versus United States, 2012. The court struck down parts of Arizona's immigration law, affirming the federal executive's primacy in immigration enforcement. Texas versus United States, 2023. SCOTUS upheld Biden administration's enforcement guidelines prioritizing certain deportations, affirming executive discretion.
Again, not just Trump. There's a case right there that where Biden had things done. And these are court cases now. So this is all due process. This has all been decided on legally. So this is something that people are saying doesn't happen. There it is. If there's something you need to know, go find out.
3. Parole authority. Presidents can grant parole into the U.S. for urgent humanitarian reasons or significant public benefit. Legal basis. Venus Section 212, D, 5, 8 U.S.C. Section 1182, D, 5, A. Use examples. Cuban and Haitian migrants, Afghan evacuees, Ukrainian war refugees. Controversy. Texas and other states have sued to block Biden's use of parole programs, pending appellate outcomes in 2025.
Because the parole programs were just saying, oh, hey, yeah, welcome to the U.S. We haven't run a background check on you at all, but come on in. Okay, crime spikes. Why? I wonder. We have enough people who are born here that are problem criminals. We're going to let some more in? That just doesn't make any sense.
Deferred action, for example, the ACA. Presidents may use prosecutorial discretion to defer removal of certain undocumented immigrants. Key program. The ACA, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, created by Executive Action under Obama. Key cases. Department of Homeland Security versus Regents of the University of California, 2020. SCOTUS blocked Trump's attempt to rescind DACA due to failure to follow proper procedures, not because DACA was unconstitutional.
Okay, this is something important to bear in mind. The Trump administration failed to follow proper executive procedure. It had nothing to do with the courts. Okay, it had nothing to do with anybody prosecuting anybody just because their skin's a different color. It had nothing to do with any of that. There were mistakes in the executive process, not because it was unconstitutional.
Texas versus United States. Ongoing, lower courts have found DACA exceeds executive authority, but the issue remains unsettled pending appeals.
Okay, the lower courts have found DACA exceeds executive authority. The mere existence of the program exceeds executive authority, which means when it was signed in, it wasn't exactly legal. But let it go anyway. Why? Because it wasn't Trump. If it was Trump that tried to sign that into effect, then people would be screaming about it.
5. Emergency powers. Presidents can use emergency declarations to restrict or modify immigration processes. Legal basis. National Emergencies Act. ENA Section 215, A, 1, 8 U.S.C. Section 1185, Control of International Travel During Emergencies. Use examples. COVID-19 era Title 42 expulsions under Trump and Biden. Health authority used to expel migrants at the border. Key case. Felicia versus Mayorkas District Court held Title 42 could not override asylum protections, later stayed and modified on appeal.
Okay, so now you've got these court cases, right? So when people say, oh, they didn't consult the courts, they did. They consulted the courts. It's right there. All right. And Title 42, well, that was over health concerns, but it doesn't override asylum protections. But Okay? It doesn't mean that they can just walk right in across the border and be at home. There's a process. There's due process both ways. There's due process when you deport someone, and there's due process when they come in. Stop. You need both. Both are important. Right now, the courts are pretty much overrun with immigration cases. I did a video that was mentioned that too. Was pretty thorough about it.
6. Diplomatic and treaty powers. Presidents influence immigration through bilateral agreements. For example, safe third country agreements, refugee quotas, asylum cooperation. Examples. U.S. Mexico Migration Enforcement Agreements 2019 MPP. Remain in Mexico. Asylum seekers wait in Mexico 2019 Joint Declaration Troop Deployment. Expanded MPP 2020 Title 42 begins Mexico accepts expulsions 2022 Title 42 expanded includes Cubans. Nicaraguans 2023 Title 42 ends Mexico agrees to new deportation cooperation 2024 ongoing talks focus on regional coordination. U.
All right. These are all agreements that are already in existence, legally signed and agreed to by participating countries. So everybody knew what they were getting into. So if there's anybody who's going to sit in a restaurant somewhere having coffee with their friends and say, "Oh, Mexico didn't agree with that," well, they did. They did agree to it. It's right there. You can look it up.
S. Canada Safe Third Country Agreement signed December 5th, 2002 effective December 29th, 2004 legal basis. Canada's Immigration and Refugee Protection Act, IPA, Section 102. U.S. Refugee Act of 1980 purpose. To prevent asylum shopping by requiring refugee claimants to seek asylum in the first safe country they arrive in, either the U.S. or Canada, unless they meet certain exceptions.
So if they come to a safe country, they're not under any sort of threat from the country that they came from. Okay, they get to stay there and wait. They do the proper paperwork. They come in legally. Welcome to the U.S. Here's your working papers. Get a job. Make yourself a living. Pay your taxes. And don't be a criminal. That's it. I know it sounds complicated, but it's really not.
Annual refugee cap set by the President, with consultation, Venus Section 207, 8 U.S.C. Section 1157, the President shall determine the number of refugees to be admitted to the U.S. for humanitarian reasons, after appropriate consultation with Congress, at the beginning of each fiscal year, October 1st.
With consultation with Congress. Now here's something important to remember. Consultation with Congress is mandatory, but the President does not have to take what Congress says like it's a law. It's not a ruling. He's just getting their advice. That's what that is.
Key points. The President sets the annual refugee ceiling. Must consult with Senate and House Judiciary Committees. Consultation is required but not binding. Congress does not vote on the cap. The President can adjust the number mid-year in response to emergencies or crises.
Now here's the thing is the President can look at all the numbers and go, wow, there are a lot of refugees. This is just too much. We're being overpowered. Kind of like now. And the President has the power to say, no more. No more. We're not taking any more. And he can go to Congress and say, okay, I'm not going to allow any more refugees in the country for a while. What do you guys think about that? And then Congress can say, well, we think that sucks. That's a terrible idea. Don't do that because of this and this and that and the other thing. And then the President can say, thank you for your input. And he can go back and do what he thinks he has to do anyway.
3. Court decisions limiting or checking presidential immigration powers.
Here's where it gets a little dry.
INS versus Chadha, 1983. Legislative veto of executive deportation suspensions. Congress cannot overturn executive decisions on immigration without bicameralism imprisonment.
Okay, now this is important. Congress cannot just say willy-nilly, yeah, we're gonna tell the president he can't do that. You can tell him. Good luck.
Zadvitas versus Davis, 2001. Indefinite detention of immigrants. Limits detention to a reasonable time, typically 6 months, if removal is not foreseeable. Hamby versus Rumsfeld, 2004. Detention of U.S. citizens as enemy combatants. Even during war, citizens are entitled to due process.
Okay, it says even during war, citizens are entitled to due process. But we're not talking about citizens here. So I'm not sure if that case actually applies.
Boumediene versus Bush, 2008. Habeas corpus for detainees. Non-citizens held abroad of habeas rights in U.S. controlled facilities.
Okay, they've got they can file a habeas case when there are places involved like Guantanamo Bay. That's U.S. control, right? Now, if we send them to El Salvador, go to prison and be held in El Salvador, that's not U.S. control. So that's exempt.
Gonzalez versus Oregon, 2006. Federal control over state-regulated health decisions. Limits overreach of federal power under broad statutory interpretation.
That means that people can blame the president all they want to about the health care of immigrants, aliens, deportees, blame all you want. The president has absolutely no say in that. It's all in the states in which the cases are happening. That's who has say. So if you live in a state, you love your governor, okay, but you hate the things that are happening to people that come to this country illegally as far as health care. Okay, you gotta understand something. You love your governor, but you hate what your governor's doing. Again, you're saying that you're wrong when you do that. Just point that out. Okay?
4. Summary table of presidential immigration powers. Entry bans in a Section 212. F. Trump versus Hawaii.
This next part's really dry, but it's short. Very short.
Enforcement discretion in a Section 103. Art. 2 Arizona versus U.S. 2012. Texas versus U.S. 2023. Deferred action parole authority in a Section 212. D. 5. Various challenges in lower courts. Deferred action prosecutorial discretion regents of UC. 2020. Texas versus U.S. DACA. Emergency powers Title 42. National Emergencies Act Uisha. Refugee quotas and agreements INA and treaties annual presidential determinations.
So all of these things have been decided on, even the things that are continually challenged. For some strange reason, people just seem to feel the need to come back and say, but. I say, get your butts out of the way. You're in the way of process. Get out of there. Jeez. So these people, they get due process. The president can decide all of this stuff. So everything Trump is doing is constitutional. Now, I am not saying that I like or dislike any of it. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is it's legal and it's constitutional. There's not been one thing that Trump has done that has been illegal. Well, as far as we know, as far as immigration is concerned. I don't know Trump personally, so I don't know what he's done behind closed doors. I've seen some things he's been exposed for. He shouldn't have done those things. And I agree with that there are things that he just absolutely should not have done. But as far as this is concerned, he's on the money all the way across. People fight it, people argue about it, people complain about it, but it's legal. And I got a timetable here. It says presidential immigration powers, major court decisions. As far back as 1983, which had nothing to do with Trump. Nothing at all. And then there's a 2001, right? All of these things. Some of these cases had absolutely nothing to do with Trump. Nothing. But he's getting all the blame. Why? Because people don't like him. So what? So what if I'm not his greatest supporter either. I'm really not. But I'm going to tell you this. I know that when I need to know something, I go find out. And I find out that these things are legal. 100%. And the Supreme Court backs him on his stuff because it's also constitutional. So before you go ranting and raving, before anybody does, go find out. Go find out. Grab a pen and some paper, write down some of these things. Go look them up yourself. You'll see I'm not lying to you. But on that note, I would say please do comment, like, share, follow. I would certainly appreciate it. And we need to get some more information out. There are some really cool upcoming stuff. And I intend to follow through as much as I possibly can. I don't think I'll revisit this particular subject because I think I covered it pretty thoroughly here. But I appreciate your time, and God bless you. God bless America.